Something huge is happening in India's legal world. We're talking about a complete overhaul of the criminal justice system. Today, we're unpacking the brand new Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, or BNS for short. This law is set to replace a system that's been around for over 160 years. So, let's dive in and see what's really changing.
And that right there is the million-dollar question, isn't it? That's exactly what the BNS is trying to answer. This isn't just a minor update or a few tweaks here and there. Nope. It's a full-on replacement of a colonial-era code with the massive goal of building a justice system for a truly modern India. All right, first up, let's get a handle on what this new criminal code is all about and why replacing that old law is such a big deal.
So, effective July 1st, 2024, think of the BNS as the new operating system for criminal law in India. Its whole purpose is to take hundreds of different laws and rules, some of them ancient, and bring them all together into one single, streamlined code for the entire country.
Okay, so now that we know what it is, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Who does this new law actually apply to, and where does its power end?
Well, the main rule is pretty straightforward. If a crime happens inside the geographical borders of India, the BNS applies. It's the law of the land, plain and simple. But, and this is a big but, the BNS has a really long arm. As this example from the law shows, if you're an Indian citizen and you commit a serious crime, say, anywhere else in the world, you can still be brought back to India and put on trial for it. And this is where it gets really 21st century. The law also has a powerful digital reach. So if some hacker anywhere in the world decides to target a computer server located in India, it doesn't matter where they are physically sitting. The BNS says they can be held accountable.
All right, to really understand any law, you've got to speak the language, right? So let's take a minute to decode some of the key terms, the real building blocks of this new code.
Let's start with a simple word: document. You probably think of a piece of paper. Well, the BNS brings that definition right into the digital age. Now, a document officially includes things like emails, digital files, and electronic records. It's a small change, but it has huge implications. Now, let's contrast that modern idea with a classic legal principle called common intention. This example shows that if two people work together to commit a crime, in this case, two jailers who deliberately starve a prisoner, they're both considered equally guilty of the final result, even if they had different roles. Now, here's a really important background rule you have to keep in mind for everything in the BNS. There's a whole chapter on general exceptions, things like acting in self-defense or the fact that a young child can't be held criminally responsible. The law says you have to assume these exceptions apply everywhere, even if they aren't written into every single criminal offense. Okay, let's get to the part everyone always wants to know about. What actually happens when you break the law? Let's talk about the punishments. The BNS lays out 6, and only 6 official types of punishment. You've got the most severe, like the death penalty and life in prison, then things like regular imprisonment, taking away property, and fines. But look at that last one on the list. There's a brand new option in the toolkit. So when you put the old law and the new one side by side, you can see that 5 of the punishments are pretty much the same. But look at number 6. That's the real game changer here. For the first time, community service is formally introduced as a punishment, giving courts a more rehabilitative option that just wasn't there before. Okay, so we have the list of punishments, but it's not like judges can just pick one at random. The BNS also sets out some very clear rules for how these sentences are supposed to be decided and carried out. Let's start with a really practical question. What happens if a court gives someone a fine, but they just don't pay it? Well, the new code is super clear about this. A court can order extra jail time, but, and this is key, that extra time can't be more than 1/4 of the maximum sentence for the original crime. And the moment that fine gets paid, the person walks free. It's a pretty proportional system. Okay, here's another interesting scenario. Let's say it's clear someone committed a crime, but because of the specific details, the court isn't 100% sure which of 2 or 3 different offenses it falls under. What happens then? This is where a really important principle of leniency kicks in. The BNS states that in cases of doubt like this, the offender gets punished for the crime that has the lowest penalty. It's basically a built-in safeguard to prevent someone from getting a harsher sentence than they might deserve. Now let's talk about something much more serious: solitary confinement. This is one of the harshest forms of punishment available,
And because it's so severe, the BNS puts some very strict and very clear limits on how it can be used.
First off, solitary confinement cannot go on for more than 14 days at a time, period. That's a hard stop. And it gets even stricter. If the person's total prison sentence is more than 3 months, that limit drops to just 7 days of solitary in any given month. And finally, there's an absolute maximum. Over the entire course of a person's sentence, no matter how long it is, they cannot be held in solitary confinement for more than 3 months in total. So, when you take a step back and look at all of this, what does this new legal framework really signal? Well, from updating old definitions for our digital world to adding rehabilitative punishments like community service and setting clear, humane limits on sentencing, the BNS really does represent a massive shift. It's about moving away from a colonial-era rulebook towards a more structured and, hopefully, a more modern system of justice designed for the 21st century.